The Queen's Gambit is definitely one of the most popular openings in chess, so it's really important that you get to know it. When I was a kid, I experimented with it, but I would play it against other kids. And because my dad was a Florida State champion and a chess coach himself, I was usually better than the other kids. And so I would think that the Queen's Gambit was working, when really it was all those other things that I had learned from my dad. Tactics and strategy and in-game skills. So in any case, once I started playing the Queen's Gambit against stronger players, well, then it wasn't working. I asked my dad for a little lesson on it, and basically, this is what he showed me. I kept playing, when I was a young player as white, I would play d4, my opponent played d5, and now I would offer the Queen's Gambit. A gambit is when you give away a pawn, usually, sometimes two pawns, sometimes even a knight or a bishop, in order to gain an advantage in time or space or some other thing like pawn structure or opening up your opponent's king. So here, white is trying to deflect black's pawn in the center so that white can get better control over the center. So in the Queen's Gambit Accepted, and there's two different main variations: Queen's Gambit Accepted, where they take the pawn, where black captures your pawn, or Declined, where they say, no thanks, I'll decline that pawn gambit. But in the accepted variation, looks like this, I would always play pawn to e4 because it controlled all these center squares. And I was experiencing great success until I started playing against Class A players like 1800 to 2000 and above. And then I wasn't doing as well. And the reason I wasn't doing as well is because they seemed to hold on to this pawn. By pushing my e-pawn now, I'm threatening for my bishop to come out and capture that pawn that I gambited. And so they would protect it, creating a pawn chain, and I would attack the base of their pawn chain just like I'd learned in my strategy lessons. And then they would protect it, and I would have a hard time gaining the advantage. They had the extra pawn, plus they were stopping my bishop from coming out to a good square, and I didn't have very good success with it. So I said to my dad, okay, you see what you can do against me, and I'll pretend to be these guys playing black. And so my dad said, great, let's do it. It's always a great way to learn. Play a better player and see how they would do things, and then you can learn from them. So my dad played d4 and I played d5. He played c4, and of course I captured it. And then my dad played e3. And I thought, well, that can't be as good as my move, because when he plays e3, it doesn't control those squares on d5 and f5 like when you play e4. So, maybe Dad's wrong about this one. Maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. So I was playing just like the other guys. I played b5, and now my dad attacked the base, and I said, yeah, I did that too. Same thing, except you don't have as good a control of the center. Now, obviously at this point, if you're playing white and your opponent plays a6, that doesn't work. You can capture, and there's a pin along the a file. Their rook is back there on a8. If they play pawn takes pawn, you get to take their rook. So instead, I played pawn to c6, just like those players who had defeated me played. My dad snapped it up. I took back, and then my dad played queen to f3, and suddenly I realized why pawn to e3 on move 3 was better than pawn to e4, because now he has this open diagonal towards my rook. And my best move was to just give away my knight so that I could then block this check and save my rook at least. And of course, then I'm just losing. This is the Queen's Gambit Accepted trap. Very simple line for us to look at. And just a quick review of it: d4, d5, c4, d takes c4, or pawn takes pawn, and then pawn to e3, not e4, and black protects it. You attack the base of their little pawn chain, and then when they protect, capture, capture, and the queen comes out to f3. All right, that's it for this lesson. Next lesson, in the progressive level, you will learn about the Queen's Gambit Declined. I'll check you later.